guys, Louise here with Red Pony Dog Training, back for another episode of Reactive Dog Chats. Today we're talking about decompression. We're going to be talking about ways that you can help your dog complete the stress cycle so that when they do have a reaction or if they're dealing with lots of stress, you have a way to help them recover and move on with a better frame of mind. Sounds good, doesn't it? Piper's working on some decompression right now. So let's jump in and start talking about some ways you can do this with your guys. So to start, let's talk about what stress looks like. This can look like a lot of different things depending on your dog. We have the more obvious signs of stress, like a dog growling, barking, lunging, snarling, snapping, or biting. Dogs displaying these signals are clearly experiencing a high level of stress. Now, I also want to touch on a few other signs of stress that are more easily missed. The first one is hypervigilance. So we all know that feeling when you're constantly looking over your shoulder, your eyes are darting around, you don't want to miss anything because you're concerned. That's a clear sign of stress in dogs as well. The next one is panting. I see this a lot in dogs, especially in a new classroom environment where they've never been before. Now, panting is a normal behavior. If your dog is running around and having a great time, or if it's hot outside, you'll see them pant. But outside of those contexts, if your dog is panting, they're experiencing stress. Say you're walking down a busy urban street in the middle of winter, it's cool out, and you're just at a nice stroll, but there's a lot of cars around. Your dog may be stressed if you see them panting. Next up is hyperactivity. Now, hyperactivity and hypervigilance can go hand in hand, but sometimes not. Hyperactivity may just be a sudden increase in your dog's activity. Maybe they're walking faster. Maybe all of a sudden they're pulling very hard and desperately trying to get away or to something. We see that sudden increase of activity. That can be a sign that they're experiencing stress. Now, similarly, a lack of activity can be a sign of stress as well. A lack of movement in a dog that normally moves frequently and regularly is cause for alarm. Now, that doesn't mean you have to freak out. It just means your dog may be a little bit uncomfortable and maybe they need your help. An increase of activity or a lack of activity may be concerning, but it really does depend on your dog. And this is why it's so important that you understand dog body language so you can really get to know and understand your dog for their unique individual qualities. Now, when a dog or human experiences stress, it's important that they move on from it, that they process the stress and complete their stress cycle through decompression. Now, I know what you're saying. Okay, Louise, got it. But why? So if your dog experiences a lot of stress and doesn't recover from it, they're going to hang on to it. You know, because that's probably happened to you. It's happened to me. It's going to make them more likely to go over their threshold with each new trigger. Have you ever heard of a dog reacting or suddenly becoming aggressive, having gone from 0 to 60 in a hot second? The reality is that maybe that dog didn't go from 0 to 60, but that they maybe went from 50 to 60 or 59 to 60. And what I mean by that is if a dog's normal status is that they are highly stressed or they're experiencing a lot of stress or they're holding on to a lot of stress, when something happens, they're much more likely to be sent over their threshold because they're already just below it to begin with. Now, what's important to remember is that your dog is going to react. It's okay. They're dogs. Your measure of success is not going to be whether or not your dog reacts to their triggers, but rather how quickly they recover when they do. Your success is in your dog's ability to feel uncomfortable and then let it go. Over time, you'll find that your dog will react less often and with less intensity with the right training. So let's talk about some ways you can help your dog complete their stress cycle. It's important to remember that all dogs are individuals. And so you're going to want to spend some time doing some trial and error with these exercises to see which activity helps your dog the most. I know for me personally, when I'm stressed out, I don't want to come home and read. Maybe I want to come home and go for a run or eat some tasty food or play a board game with my husband. Maybe I want to walk the dogs. And those are things that I can do to complete my stress cycle, but it may be different for you and the next person. So it's the same for dogs, and they will be individual. So definitely spend some time trialing out these next exercises and see what works. First up is the Sniffari. The Sniffari is where sniffing meets safari, and it's basically exactly as it sounds. You're going to go out with your dog someplace safe and trigger free and let them sniff to their heart's content. When we do a Sniffari, we open the door and the dog gets to decide which direction we're going in within reason. I'm not going to let my dog lead me into oncoming traffic. I'm not going to let her drag me to a pile of turkey poop either. So I'm going to stay paying attention. I'm not going to be on my phone. I'm watching them. I'm supporting my dog wherever they'd like to go, sniffing for as long as they'd like to sniff. I usually have a cue to tell my dog when we're all done and we're either returning to a normal walk or we're heading back home. Be consistent with your dog so that when you're done, you have a cue as well. Next up is a treat scatter, or like we say, go sniff. The treat scatter is the easiest one to do, and it might be the most powerful. Again, it depends on your dog. When we are out on walks with our dogs on trail, maybe not on the side of the road, but if we experience a trigger and we move on from it, I always do a treat scatter in the grass. I'll cue them by saying, go sniff, and I'll drop some treats into the grass to get them sniffing and working through that stress. Sniffing is such a wonderful way to help a dog's heart rate lower and help them really settle in and calm down. Now, if you've never done this with your dog, I want to invite you to check out the information in the description below. In our free mini training course, The Distracted Dog, we start out by teaching you how to cue your dog to sniff on cue. It becomes a reinforcer in and of itself because dogs love to sniff. And when we can put it on cue, we can use it as a reinforcer as well as a behavior to help with decompression. You're going to head over to redpointydog.com/distracteddog if you want more info. I'll link it below as well. Sometimes we just go outside on a leash and I throw my dog's kibble in the grass just for her dinner. This can be really fun, and it's a great opportunity to provide your dog with a little extra enrichment with very little effort on your part. Next up is a foraging toy. Now, this can look like a lot of different things depending on the materials or toys you have at home. With our dogs, we use a couple of different versions of this. You may use a muffin pan with some treats in it or even their kibble and toys on top, so they have to rummage through the toys to get to the treats underneath. We also will save our empty cardboard boxes and our junk mail and our empty Chex Mix boxes and Cheez-It boxes or toilet paper tubes. It all goes in there. We'll sprinkle their food in there, and then they get to rummage and forage through to find their meal. And you were going to throw it away anyway. And if you want to be a little cutesy like we do with our dogs, you could get them a ball pit. It's not required, but I have a kiddie pool in my apartment with 400 ball pit balls. It comes out of the closet about twice a month, and our dogs just get to forage through the balls to get their kibble. Again, if you don't want to invest in a ball pit for your dogs, try one of the other two options I mentioned and see if your dog likes it. This may be the most obvious option, and that is with play. It will depend on your dog if they want to play or if they are able to play after having been stressed out. A lot of dogs will, and just as many won't. I know Piper does not want to play when she's worked up, but Monzo is much more likely to play tug with his favorite toy. So this really does depend on the individual dog, but I want you to try it because if you come home from a stressful walk and your dog wants to play, that is such a wonderful way to help them recover from any discomfort and really process any of that energy that they were dealing with on the walk. It's also just a fabulous way to engage and bond with your dog. I love playing tug and drop games. I use a long fleece tug toy. It has some rabbit fur in there as well, and that really gets them excited. It's nice and long and stretchy. But if your dog likes to play fetch, that's fine too. I would just make sure that whatever play you're doing doesn't work your dog up to the point of overstimulation. We want this play not to be relaxing. It should be engaging and fun, but not so much that they're getting a little too worked up. And my last option is a licky mat. Now, if you don't know what a licky mat is, it's a silicone square with texture on it that you can smear things into it like peanut butter, cream cheese, spray cheese, or even just canned dog food. Prolonged periods of licking can be really soothing to dogs, and it also helps lower their heart rate, just like sniffing does. It'll depend on your dog if they like this opportunity or not. I usually try to carry a licky mat in my car with some kind of lickable, like peanut butter in a squeeze pouch, so that when we return from a walk, I have that opportunity for them to help them settle down and relax, even in the car while we're driving home. Now, these are all things that you can try with your dog at home or on the go. There's lots of versions that you can create that are portable, like Go Sniff or Treat Scatter on the side of the trail. You could jump into a Sniffari after a regular walk while you're already outside. Maybe you have a licky mat in your car, or maybe you just smear some treats into the bark of a tree. These are all things that you can try with your dog to help them recover from stressful situations. I coach my students that after your dog has a tough encounter on trail or on a walk, where they've gone over their threshold, if it's safe, take a beat and see if you can do one of these exercises with your dog. Do a treat scatter, do a sniffari, cue them to sniff in the grass, and then move on so you aren't just racing away from the stressor and the trigger. So here's your action item for this week. I want you to try just one of these skills with your dog, one that you haven't tried before, and I want you to observe their body language before you give it to them, during when they're working on it, and after. And then I want you to come back and share in the comments. Tell us what you saw and which one you chose and how much your dog liked it. Thank you so much for joining us today for another episode of Reactive Dog Chats. I hope you learned something. Do me a favor and tell your dog I said hi, give them a treat from me, and I will see you again next time. Bye for now.